I used to drive an SL, pretty gold convertible, nice rims. I don't even think on that car no more.
You put it behind you, huh?
Some can. I'm just saying, you want to stay on the straight. Ain't gonna be no big reward to it. This is it, right here. Prime that bitch 3 times. She'll start right up.
Alex Cottrell and Toby Huntingford present Caught on the Wire. This podcast is an episode-by-episode analysis of HBO's widely acclaimed TV series about the city of Baltimore, its people, and its many problems. Find more information about the show and all the episodes online at caughtonthewire.wordpress.com.
Hello. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. It's Toby here. We're back on with Caught on the Wire. I'm with Alex as always. And we're here today. We're piling through season 3. And where are we now? Is this episode 4?
That's right.
It is episode 4. Yeah. Amsterdam. So we're heading over to
Europe. Or Hamsterdam, depending on how you see it.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to get to this. I think this is the only episode that has disputes over its actual name. So
I think on the HBO website it's officially titled Hamsterdam, but on the DVD release, the original DVD release, it's titled Amsterdam. I feel like that's a mistake. I feel like it probably got, because you look at the DVD cases, we've spoken before about how they're not very good.
You can tell that no one in the show was
taglines.
Yeah, that's true.
I can't imagine that any of the producers were particularly involved with the creation of that. So I feel like they probably got the title, saw Hamsterdam, and like, oh, maybe it's a mistake.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That is very true,
That's
actually.
a very wild assumption.
I think either title is a good title, though.
Yeah, I guess so.
Hamsterdam probably is a little bit more kind of there. But, yeah, it's a good episode overall. I think it's like the only time the title actually refers to a real noun, so to speak, rather than just a concept. It's like an actual thing in the title, so it's a bit of a different way to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's always struck me. I think we should probably turn to your book, Truth Be Told. I feel like that might be the ultimate jurisdiction on whether the title is Hamsterdam or Amsterdam.
Ah, right. I don't actually have it within reach at the moment.
I'm sure you can save it up for next week. We'll have the big reveal.
I'm pretty sure it says Hamsterdam.
Yeah. Okay. There we go.
Yeah, once again, like last week, where I don't know. I think you're the same, Toby, but we got the sun streaming in through the windows, so it's going to make it a nice progress through the podcast as it progressively gets darker.
Yeah, I need to turn my lights on now so that by the time I finish, I'm not just sat in the pitch black without being able to read my notes. So
I know, sunset is still a couple of hours away, but you know how long we take, so.
That's just the way it is. Okay, so what do we normally do first? We normally go to Listener's Corner, don't we?
It's only been a week, Toby. You haven't forgotten already, have you?
Well, I was just wondering, whether we talk about Game of Thrones now, talk about it later, to get it out of the way.
Later? Just in the middle of the podcast?
Have a little, we take so long these days, we could have a kind of break halfway through. Just let some other shows in.
We could do.
Nah, probably not. Let's just get it out of the way now. Have you seen Sunday's episode? Have you?
I have, yeah.
Did you?
I have, but again, we're in this position where we can't really say anything because it's not a Game of Thrones podcast, so can't say anything. But I feel like I mentioned this last week. I feel like there's still a lot of scenes where it's kind of a lot of two characters in a room, sort of explaining their intentions, or someone demonstrating some part of their character for them, or it's it feels like it has a real formula to it, but it's really satisfying.
Yeah.
It's a weirdly formulaic show, I think, but it's also, like I say, really, really well executed, and all the attention to detail has been put into the new environments, and it's really hard not to like it.
It's certainly a very nice looking show. I think this week there were a few logic gaps which are very unusual or very uncharacteristic of the show.
Yeah, I mean it's taken leaps, isn't it? Because it's gone so wildly off track from the books.
Yeah, like they're
kind of making it up now.
Exactly, yeah. Like there's only one or two scenes, I believe, that were actually taken from the books this episode. and obviously there's a very controversial ending that's very Game of Thrones, if anything else. So it's weird that we have to.
It's very helpful analysis, this, isn't it? We're really providing a lot of depth to those who haven't seen the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we're really dancing around the show, but I guess we have to. We're not a Game of Thrones podcast, so we don't want to spoil it for anyone.
Good episode, either way. Good episode.
Yeah, not bad.
A friend of mine turned to me with a TV series suggestion. He said it had Dominic West in it. There's this new one that's come out, The Affair.
Yes.
Now I've not seen it, but it sounds kind of good. So I'm interested in watching it. Have you seen anything of it?
I have actually. I saw the first episode, the pilot, a while back. It's not bad at all, actually. I think it's Showtime, the showrunner. It's pretty good. From I know that Showtime are one of the better. Are they network? I think they're network, aren't they? I know there's like the network cable divide over in America. It's pretty.
It's quite a generic idea for a drama.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just really well executed. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the basic. It's like good versus evil style stories. I mean, they're all the same, really, but it's the way it's executed. So I guess. How did you rate Dominic West in it? Was he?
Yeah, he's certainly the star of the show, and he's playing basically McNulty, an older, kind of more tempered version of McNulty with a very British accent, who happens to be in America. Some of the same problems as the title alludes to, but it's just kind of a more sedated performance. Not bad at all. He's always a fantastic actor, and the name escapes me of the lady he's playing.
Ruth Wilson.
That's it, Ruth Wilson, who's also kind of the lead lady in Luther. She does an alright job. It was a long time ago I watched it. It's a very slow moving pilot. Starts in New York, moves out to the big beach houses over in Long Island, where they settle down for their holiday.
Alright. Yeah. Well, I was told that it involves seeing things from various perspectives. There's like an element of it where it shows you scenes differently depending on the person's perspective, something like that.
Yeah. There was certainly a sense of that in the first episode. I think the first episode was very much Dominic West heavy, but I do believe that later episodes become quite heavy towards Ruth Wilson as well. So it's kind of the dual perspective. And I know there are shows that like to focus in on different characters for each episode. Lost and Orange is the New Black come to mind. So it's kind of like that, but they keep switching perspectives, and the idea is that you get a different moral compass, I guess, depending on whose side you see it from, and you see the intentions working differently and working against each other, I guess. So
Nice.
I really don't feel qualified enough to say much about the show, to be honest, 'cause I've only seen the pilot, but it's something that I did enjoy and probably will go and watch more of at some point.
I'll have to check it out then.
Yeah, definitely.
Speaking of Orange is the New Black, there's a new series coming soon, isn't there?
Yes, July or so, I believe. That should be pretty good. I think Series 1 was the touchstone, really. Series 2 wasn't bad. And I'll certainly be tuning in for Series 3.
Yeah, I definitely kind of enjoyed what I saw of Orange is the New Black. I watched the two seasons pretty quickly, and it was a little while ago now. But I remember it being pretty enjoyable, although I don't really remember loads about it, to be honest. I kind of remember it visually. It's got a very distinct style visually in the way the show is kind of laid out, and the way that programs have their environments and their sort of familiar areas that you see, especially in sitcoms, where it's all very carefully in these different sets, and you kind of return to them, they become familiar. Like Orange is the New Black did that very well. I guess because you're inside a prison and you're always in this one compound, so it's easy to get attached to that area. So I kind of remember a lot about that, but I remember having quite a few problems with the story in places, but I don't remember what those things were.
Yeah, I think some of the characters introduced in the second season don't feel quite as natural or real as they do in the first season.
Yeah, it's a very zany show.
Yeah.
Very zany.
The first season...
Seems like they're having a lot of fun for people in prison.
Yeah, definitely. And it feels like the show's trying to kind of balance between something that's gritty and real and relatable, and something that's kind of a bit hyper-real and a bit of fun. I mean, it's the dramedy, isn't it? It perfectly balances the comedy and the drama. I can't think of a show that does it better, actually. And that's all part of it. So,
well, with that style of thing, I always think of, although it may not be like the original example, I always think of like the kind of Scrubs style, where it's that dramedy thing, and you have moments of kind of great emotional gravity, and then sort of really silly, out of this world kind of comedy sections. Scrubs was very much like that. I don't know how much of that you've seen.
I'm very uninitiated on Scrubs, I'm afraid, which is quite bad, really, because it's such a classic show. It's been around for so long.
Yeah, it's certainly, I mean, it totally loses its way near the end, especially once they start trying to reboot it with the interns or whatever. But it's a pretty good show. It's actually quite clever, but it's easy to watch, but it's not like the best comedy I've ever seen or anything. Like,
Yeah.
it's very watchable. It's like The Office. You can just kind of like stick it on and just have it in the background, and then have this really sort of zany show that's kind of hard not to at least smile at.
Yeah, I can see that. It's just one of those shows that has 1 million episodes, and you don't have to worry about running out anytime soon. You can just kind of stick it on whenever you have a moment and enjoy it for what it is, sort of
It's
thing.
classic comedy.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of The Office,
Friends? Were you a Friends fan?
Yes, yep, absolutely. I've blitzed through a fair bit of that show, not in order, but I've seen it. It's a very good comedy, really, and really quite revolutionary when it came out back in the 90s.
What is your favourite sitcom, Toby? I don't think I've ever asked you.
Well,
If you say Friday Night Dinner, we're going to have
whoa,
problems.
whoa, that shouldn't be publicly available information. Now you mention it now, I did this week blitz through the UK Office. My brother was watching it for the first time, and I just wanted to go along for the ride again. I'm not sure I'd have picked that if I hadn't seen it this week, but it's just such a fantastic show, and I'm always reminded of its brilliance when I watch it. And it's one of those shows that knew when to end, and it didn't last long at all. It lasted 14 episodes. I believe the US Office has lasted way over 200, quite possibly.
8 seasons.
Yeah, it's just kind of crazy. Where the two shows are very highly revered for very different reasons. I'm personally really in the camp UK as far as the show goes. It's absolutely astounding TV show, very real but very, very funny. And they kind of, there's this theme of mundane that just runs through the whole show. And there's a really kind of British element to it that doesn't really feature in the US Office. But the idea of this kind of really grey, drab, boring environment that sends everyone crazy and sends everyone into these fantasy worlds where they want to be these big bosses and these people that matter. So it's a really good show. Easy to blitz through. I think it's only about 3 or 4 hours for the whole thing. So definitely recommend it.
It's very existential, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
The UK Office. It has that sort of harsh reality comedy to it. That's where the sort of darkness of a lot of its humour comes from.
Definitely, yeah.
And it is, like you say, it's very real. It has that mockumentary style that the US Office has for like the first season, and then just kind of takes it in a different direction. And although they're very different shows, I think credit has to be given to the team on the US Office, and obviously Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant produced it, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
So they kind of had a hand in it, and they did a good job at sort of adapting it for the US audience and making it a very different show. It really was completely different, and kind of, it was good that they didn't just try to remake the same thing, because I think that would have been a disaster. There have been like American versions of British. Isn't there an American In-Betweeners?
There is. Oh god.
I think I caught a little bit of it, and I was like, no.
It's the worst possible transfer of ideas to that I've seen in a telly show. It's awful.
Like, don't just try to imitate the original. Consider where those people stand in, in the US society, and kind of how that changes. And I don't know, it's just basic stuff, I guess. They didn't really seem to think about it. It's just a carbon copy.
It is, yeah. They're just rinsing and repeating the jokes without thinking about it or putting any effort in, and they just don't seem to have a sense of the comic timing or the context of the original that made it so funny in the first place. It's just completely copied and pasted in a really harsh way.
It's so strange. Like, both shows are childish. Both the US and UK versions of The In-Betweeners are puerile by their nature, and yet somehow the UK one feels very genuine, and it feels like it's capturing an element of our childhood in a way.
Yeah.
Like, it just reminds me, it is what like school is like. It's not that much of an exaggeration. Obviously, they get into like crazy scenarios, but the way that they interact and kind of the relationships and the types of people, like, I can literally name someone that I know who's exactly like every single in-betweeners character.
Exactly. It's silly but not stupid. Definitely not stupid. It's been drawn from a lot of research and a lot of memories, I'm sure. And as you say, like, everyone who's been to school can relate to it. At least, you know, been to the UK schools. It just completely... I'm sure it's a massive nostalgia burst for adults, and when we were watching it, back when we were exactly the correct age for this show, because it came out when we were, you know, about 17, 18. And I think it really struck a chord with everyone that I know. And it's among the best sitcoms I've ever seen, definitely.
It's amazing, yeah. It's so brilliant in its simplicity.
Yeah.
It's not... It's you know, you don't have to hold your nose up to it and be like, oh, it's not highbrow comedy. It's not trying to make some really clever wordplay or anything. Like, it's still able to do that. Just its execution is wonderful.
Definitely.
Very well cast.
I think what's great about a lot of British shows, including The In-Betweeners, is the way that either it's a budgetary constraint or it might well be a kind of a choice on the creators, but every episode has an identity, and that's because there's generally so few of them. Like with The In-Betweeners, there are only 3 seasons of 6 episodes.
It's definitely budgetary.
And I'm sure it's definitely budgetary, but it's you know, it's something that I think really helps to enhance your memories of the show. And rewatching is a lot more pleasurable because you can really kind of remember each moment, and there's never any digging around for new ideas. It feels very purposeful and intentional all the time. So
there's a hell of a lot more money in American TV, and you got a much bigger audience.
Yeah, and just
a lot more money at stake.
The format, they call it the season for a reason, don't they? Instead of the series, it's the idea that it lasts for an entire, you know, season. It's 24 episodes, and it's going to take you half the year to kind of jump through it, and it's going to spin it out.
Yeah, it's a very long journey.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of British sitcoms, I mean, look at something like Fawlty Towers, an absolute classic. It's got 12 episodes.
Yeah.
12?
Yeah.
Most sort of seasons of US shows have nearly twice as many as that.
Yeah.
In one season. So it just shows the different approach and, you know, good for different reasons, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like if you binge watch something like Fawlty Towers, you can do it in like a day.
Exactly, the guilt factor goes down crazily, and each episode has been...
Remember when our friend James was doing 24? That took him months. It took him so long to do the whole of 24. There is an incredible amount of 24.
He was a determined boy. I've got much respect for him. I think he did it with Prison Break as well, which is almost as...
That's a heroic effort, that is. Binge watching Prison Break.
Mm. But Netflix makes it so easy. That's the problem. It's like a whole new ailment has just arrived since Netflix, really. Cause, I mean, Netflix even puts the next episode on for you. You don't have to press anything. And skips the intro. Just to make your binge a little bit easier. So
don't get up.
Can't blame him.
I'll do that for you.
Yeah. So that's what I saw this week. I saw The Office UK mainly, and I'm still reeling in laughter from how funny it is. Yeah.
Nice.
What?
Do you want to wander over to Listener's Corner?
Yeah. Listener's Corner's a little bit thinner this week. I think we only got one email, didn't we?
I think it was maybe the police showed up, scattered everyone.
Yeah.
Scattered from the corner.
No one decided to go to Hamsterdam, so they couldn't actually sell. But
told you to go down to Franklin Terrace. Well, you didn't listen.
Franklin Terrace went down, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, that's one of the ones that goes gets blown
so
up.
Rather than going down to the terrace, but
I picked the first kind of like building that I could think of. It was the wrong one.
The low rises are still going, I think.
Yeah.
Go with the low rises.
Is it Vincent Street they get sent down to in Hamsterdam? Is it Vincent Street?
Yes, I think you're right. I can recall Carver shouting that out at a bunch of boys.
Just think of Carver shouting it. So Vincent Street.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah, wherever that is. I think it was named this episode.
There is a map. Have you seen the Baltimore, the Wire sort of Baltimore map where it shows you all the important locations? It's in the back of Truth Be Told.
Really?
Yeah, there's a map in the back. I opened it up. I was like, what's this? And you open it up, and it's a map of Baltimore, and it shows you where all the key locations are. And
is that part of the book, or is it a fold-out map that comes...
No, it's like connected to... It's like glued to the book.
Maybe my copy didn't have that, or... I just don't recall that at all. I'm still trying to find my copy. It's just run away from me really annoyingly. But yeah, I know that there are maps out there. There's quite famously, or I think it's unofficial, but there is a wire tour that you can do in like a day, and you get to visit about 30 locations over the show. Tells you the best driving route to see them all if you want to do them on your own back. And that they're all quite nicely spread around. So yeah, that's kind of the closest I've been to seeing the actual wire mapped, as it were.
Yeah. But I digress. Listener's Corner.
Yeah. Dan
a
Weissmere.
Single email this week.
Yeah, Dan's got back to us. Great email that he sent in. It's just saying that he enjoyed the episode recently a lot. And he really just chimed in to comment and kind of add to the discussion that we had last time, really. And added a few things that we missed, which was nice. 5 things. Firstly, Cutty versus Gray, which was an early scene last episode. We forgot to mention, actually, that Cutty is playing Liar's Poker, I think it's called, with Tony Gray, which is a bit like Liar's Dice, but I think you play it with serial numbers on dollar notes or dollar bills.
Yeah, I wasn't 100% sure what the rules were.
Yeah, I remember.
Got a general idea.
I do remember looking this up back in the day, and it was, I think these serial numbers have 10, 20 digits, and you just have to guess how many of a certain digit is on there, and whether you think the other person's bullshitting or not. So it's a bit like Liar's Dice, but with a lot more randomness to it, I guess. And Dan reckons, it's a nod of things to come, with Cutty ultimately using somewhat underhanded tactics to lure Gray into the mayor game and beat him in the election. So, pushing him in and then pushing him back out, which we will see in season 4. So that's a good observation that I hadn't considered, definitely. And then we also had Royce, and the idea that Royce is someone who has plenty of people prepared to fall on their swords for him. And Dan compared this with Avon, who of course has, or at least had, his own loyal soldiers. So there's parallels everywhere, which is a nice comment. And then, of course, the big gunfight. I really do like this observation where we mentioned that...
Yeah, this is a good point.
Yeah, the reckless aiming of the gunfights, where there was just no accuracy, or very little of it. And we see, I completely forgot, that Marlowe does train up his soldiers on a number of scenes to shoot accurately out in the forest. And Snoop also comments on this as well. I think in season 5, where she talks about, in Baltimore we aim and hit, whereas Barksdale really doesn't. And I think they kind of satirise the West Coast style of gangster stuff over there with it. So it's a nice reflection of the way the game has become colder and more calculated during the Stanfield rule. I could not...
Yeah, Chris and Snoop really feel like soldiers.
Yeah.
They really kind of take that definition on.
It did make me think about Avon as well, because, everyone in Avon's crew is heated, but it feels like they're kind of obligatory street safety devices rather than something that you really treasure and learn to use properly. So
they feel experienced but not trained.
Yeah.
If you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Whereas Snoop and Chris, they have both in spades and are terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. I really can't wait for these guys to kick into gear, Chris and Snoop, because, oh man, they're so great.
And they're so awful, but so great.
Yeah. Speaking of other awful characters, we have Kennard as well, who was introduced last episode.
Oh, the worst.
Oh dear, what a great boy. And Chris...
He's not a great boy. Kennard, you're going without supper tonight.
It's true, though. Despite the Wire's wonderful ability to set up major plot points at a very early stage, I understand that the scene with Kennard wanting to act as Omar was never actually a setup for Omar's demise, and it was ultimately a happy accident. And Dan reckons that he possibly read this in Truth Be Told, as it happens. So, whether or not it was an intentional setup here, we're not sure. Dan reckons it was just by accident. But yeah, as we mentioned last week, it was nice to see that Kennard was introduced kind of pretending to be Omar, or at least shooting at Omar, where he would end up in season 5. And finally, Dan is schooling us on the police wakes I think we were unsure last week as to whether they were a real thing, and I think we assumed that they kind of were. But it's not actually a Baltimore tradition, and it was invented entirely by David Simon and Ed Burns. Although Dan reckons that they've spoken about how they hope the police of Baltimore take this tradition up in real life. So, yeah, it's a nice insight into the episode last time, and picked up quite a few things that we missed there. So
yeah, thanks for that.
Much appreciated, Dan. And yeah, it's a little bit easier listeners' corners this week. Do keep them coming in. We always appreciate your feedback.
And if, like I think I mentioned it before, but if you want to leave a rating or a comment or anything on the iTunes page, if you're listening on iTunes or on your iPod or whatever, then we'd definitely appreciate a rating and some feedback on the page itself.
Absolutely. All right. Let's not hold off any longer. Should we move to our main event?
Yep. My turn to recap this week.
Yeah. All right. Jump us in. How many sections did you manage to whittle it down to this week?
So main sections, we've got 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, there's 6. And 3 of them are pretty small. And then the other 3 are very big.
Okay, sure.
So we got politics, we got homicide, we got McNulty. There are sort of smaller ones. And we got the Western District, the Barksdale organisation, and the Major Case Unit, where we got lots to chow down on.
Definitely.
So let's start with politics. I think we started the same way last week, and I'll just do this in one, because the politics really just covers Carcetti, and we have Carcetti having dinner with some friends, and when they see reports of a murder on the news, they make disparaging comments about African Americans, which Carcetti disapproves of, insisting it's not about colour. Carcetti then announces his intention to run for mayor. He notices Teresa D'Agostino, a political consultant he knows from law school, walk in the bar. He makes a bet with his friends, who are unaware that they know each other, that he can successfully approach her. When he does talk with her, he courts her interest in becoming his campaign manager, but she tells him he has little chance of success because he is white.
All right.
So that's our scene in the bar. I just mentioned it now as well. I think it was it Damon, I think, said that it was his dad was one of the people in this scene?
Yeah, cool. So his dad was one of the guys around the table, kind of disbelieving Carcetti's announcement of mayor, and I forgot how early he does bring the whole mayoral thing up. We really haven't got far into his arc at all. He's already got those strong ambitions set in from the start. But
he set his sights pretty high pretty early.
Yeah, and also...
especially seeing as the suggestions the other guys are making. Yeah. They're like, you should run for councilman here or this seat or whatever. And Carcetti's already thinking of sidestepping all of that, going straight for mayor.
Definitely, yeah. And I mean, his moves in the first few episodes certainly point towards that. Not that he's announced it explicitly, but I guess it does make sense. He's been making some really dirty political moves and smearing a few things in the media to raise his profile. And now we see him kind of actually start almost building his campaign, and also coming across as likable for the first time in the show, when he does, appear to fight the corner of the people of Baltimore. It certainly feels heartfelt and refusing to stoop to the banter of his peers when they are kind of chastising African American people. We're not. Of course, we're not sure if this is unrepresentative of who he is and whether he's doing it to substantiate his idea to run for mayor, but nonetheless, it's certainly nice to see him doing it and committing to some sort of change.
And what we know with Teresa D'Agostino, obviously later on in season 4, you see how her opinion and approach towards Carcetti changes, because here she seems kind of cold and very dismissive of his playboy attitude.
We sense it's mainly because of their history, though, isn't it? There's definitely some sort of nasty history to them at college or something like that. And I think there's probably a lot of animosity behind that.
But then as soon as Carcetti gains this position of power, she's suddenly very, very interested again.
Yeah, Yeah, as soon as we jump to season 4, she's a different woman, isn't she? She's completely driven and focused behind Carcetti's campaign, and she really feels like it's within her grasp. So it's nice to see how she changes over the 2 seasons that she's a part of the show. But I do think that the conversation here at the bar felt very abrupt. There's no catch up. It's straight to business. I'm going to be mayor. You're going to be my campaign manager. I don't know if I kind of felt like he may have planted her there, told her to be there or something, with the politics friends being dragged along so she could wingman him and kind of make it credible to them that he's going to become mayor. They seem like quite important people to impress. But it didn't quite feel natural at all. Whereas
I suppose we don't know how long it's been since they last seen each other.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily suggested that it's been a long time.
No, because obviously in the scene, Carcetti fools the other guys, doesn't he? He claims that he doesn't know her and actually ends up buying her that drink very easily.
Either she just happens to come in and happens to be the person that he wants to run a campaign, which seems kind of unlikely, or he asked her to be there, which seems... I think that's reasonable. I think
the way it's set up, it just feels a bit too unnatural for it to have just happened by chance there. They just met each other. Certainly feels like a kind of a plant, definitely. It's just the way the politics works.
Yeah. So that's the politics bit, which is just Carcetti, really.
Yeah.
We've got a little bit for homicide here as well. This time mainly with Bunk. Bunk interviews drug dealers in the Western District that have been rounded up by the Drug Enforcement Unit. He tells them that they can have a free pass in exchange for information on the gun. Bunk returns with no leads, however, and Landsman catches up with him, ordering him to keep working on finding the gun. Bunk later meets with McNulty at a bar to discuss locating Omar to help with the murders of Tank and Tosha.
Okay, so we have, it's quite a short Bunk segment this episode, I guess, and it's just more of the same, Bunk looking for the gun. And we see that he's painfully taking to the streets here, a real last resort effort when it comes to investigating murders and other things, just to kind of plea with the boys of Baltimore to help him.
He seems pretty desperate at this point.
Yeah, and having to remove charges for this petty gun, or at least threatening to remove charges, or dangling that bait in front of them. I think the boys are as taken aback as the cops are by this request, really. So it was quite nice how he poked the little business card through each person's body in some different way. It was a nice little slip under the afro. It was quite nice.
And then when Bunk returns to the office, I think it's nice how we see him trying to creep past Landsman, and there's in the background on the audio track, you can kind of hear Landsman chatting. Then as Bunk moves closer towards his desk, it actually grows quieter. And then slowly the slurping noise is what we hear next. And it's Landsman. I thought there was a really clever, subtle use of audio just to kind of make it clear that he stopped talking, but you may not notice, and Bunk may not have noticed, and then suddenly he's there.
Yeah, it's a good catch. I hadn't actually heard that. I need to probably shove on some earphones and listen carefully, but... a nice bit of tension.
Yeah, you can hear him talking in the background. You can hear the conversation that Landsman's having over the phone in the background, and then it fades out, and then the next sound that you hear is the slurping. It's just a nice bit of audio.
Slurping's great
Another
as well.
great Landsman entrance as well.
I know, fantastic.
The
way the camera's below him, and you just see this big guy appear with his huge soft drink, just sort of playing on his own stereotype to sneak up on his employee. He's always got a different food item in his hands, or a different fast food item, so we haven't had the cup drink yet, so that's that box ticked.
Bunk clearly using up a lot of time, a lot of resources, and having to go out on the street and find all these different methods just for this gun, and we really see the hoops he's having to jump through just to find this thing on principle.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous and frustrating for everyone. And I think the Kima comes in as well. They use this to transition into a Kima Marlowe scene, don't they? But I'm sure we'll go to that later. And do we talk about the bit later on when Bunk's at the bar with McNulty and we get yet another deja vu with Bunk needing Omar again?
Yeah, another sign of Bunk desperation.
Yeah, it's just going around in circles
kind of
for
like
this guy.
He's the only other person that I know that's left. Yeah. So But I can't imagine that. I can't imagine that McNulty is all that desperate to get him to help Omar again, or get Omar in touch with Bunk again.
No, I mean McNulty definitely has no motivation for that now, and it was very difficult last time. It was only possible through Bubbles, a chance encounter with Bubbles. Bubbles almost died in the process, so
yeah, I can't imagine Bubbles not going to be up for it because, like you say, nearly cost him his life.
So shotgun yay big. So I doubt anyone's interested in doing it again. Thankfully, Omar is around. We assume he's in some sort of depressed stupor at the moment. I don't think he was in this episode, was he?
No, there's no Omar here.
Yeah, so we'll catch up with him next week, but he's clearly not in a good place at the moment.
So he's not burning any more cigarettes on himself.
Maybe, quite possibly. A bit more self-harm. And we also see number 3 in the Bunk and McNulty pickup routine lineups. So I think we saw number 2, did we? Which was my friend's really drunk. Will you have sex with me? And then I think this one
is a classic pickup line, really. I mean, I don't see how that could fail.
Yeah. And then how about number 3? We have...
I saved you from someone, therefore I deserve to have you. Right. Okay.
Sorry about him. He's had a few too many. This time, though, Mum and Dad are dead. Please have sex with me.
Please have sex with me.
So...
what kind of weird, like, medieval courting is this? Like...
It seems to work, doesn't it? I mean, I thought this was done quite... Almost, well, I mean, it was ridiculous, but it was kind of hilarious how ridiculous it was because Bunk walks over to try the pickup routine, and then the camera goes onto him about 5 seconds after he goes over, and we see him mouthing to the ladies, "Mum and Dad are dead," or something like that, and it's just like, hang on.
They don't look impressed.
You started a conversation like that, like, oh dear. So, not quite as smooth as Carcetti and D'Agostino by any means.
Yeah. Or Pullman and Daniels.
No. Yeah, true that.
You see some good flirting and some bad flirting in this episode, that's for sure.
And McNulty as well tries to go at it later on when he's absolutely wrecked.
I'm not sure I would call that flirting.
No, I'd call it
I would
more...
call it very creepy, banging on someone's door and yelling their name and like...
Oh, of course that, yeah. I mean, I think there's the time after that as well when he's in the bar after he has the chat with Daniels and he eyes off up a girl across the bar and kind of leans into her and falls off his chair in the process. So, yeah.
Yeah, McNulty definitely comes across very sleazy in this episode.
Yeah, he's clearly not going through a good phase.
But we'll get to McNulty because he's next.
Okay.
So these are all the bits that are kind of quite specifically about McNulty. So as you mentioned, after leaving the bar, a very drunk McNulty visits Perlman's house and notices Daniel's car parked outside. After there is no answer to his shouting and knocking on the entrance door, Perlman and Daniels are seen inside the apartment looking out the window at McNulty. Daniels later has an awkward drink with McNulty and they discuss his new relationship with Perlman. Jimmy tells him that he wishes him all the best and Daniels thanks him for making it easy. Later on, we see McNulty going to his son's science fair, and Elena asks him about his late alimony payments. So there's our sort of 3 little bits of McNulty. Yeah. Starting off with the bit we just talked about. He kind of notices Daniel's car there. I think that's kind of nice. Zooming in on the number, the license plate. And that's a technique that's been used before. We had it once before where Weebay was in Philly. They kind of used the license plate to sort of say where they were.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
And then here they use this technique again instead to indicate a person rather than a place.
Yeah. Yeah, very good point.
Nice.
Definitely. And I think the creepiest moment in the entire show, not McNulty rapping at the door, but actually Daniels with the shutter eyes. Just really chills me to the bone. That
Did
scene.
You go behind my back?
You don't want to hear that.
Detective McNulty.
I really think someone should make an isolated video of those eyes going behind the shutters with that as the soundtrack.
Where's a Daniels compilation when you need one?
Yeah.
Is there any? I don't think there are any.
There's one where we get to see, is it Shortest Orgasm on the Wire? Something like that. That might be a video worth posting.
That does sound like something you would see.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of maybe changing all of my phone alert sounds to various Daniels phrases.
Just lots of
that
staccato. For those who didn't catch that, that was the sound he makes when he makes love to Pullman later on. So
you could also have the my office.
No.
That's something he likes to say. He likes to tell people to go to his office.
Yeah. My pretty wire-obsessed friend did for a time have his ringtones as the fuck scene lines, and obviously all those lines are variations on motherfucker and fuck. And you get different permutations of that word depending on whether it's a text or an email or a a WhatsApp or whatever. So I thought that was a pretty innovative use of wire ringtones.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's not too bad. So I don't know how long it took him to cut those up and make them, but it's clear dedication.
So yeah, creepy blind scene with Daniels where he's like slowly closing them, staring out. That is pretty weird.
It's great.
And it doesn't get much. I mean, it's still a little bit awkward later on when he sees McNulty and they have a little drink together, and then he has to kind of ask him not to make it difficult. And Jimmy seems to concede.
Yeah,
I guess he's not going to do much else there.
McNulty takes the correct approach, really. Yeah, doesn't get pissed off, seems to accept it. Doesn't try calling her later on. Or he does, to some extent, he does pick up the phone and hover his finger over the dial pad, but finds he's got no one to call and wanders off home. So it's not the best move for McNulty. It certainly sends him down a hole further. But it's nice that you really felt that Daniels felt that this was a lot more awkward than McNulty did, and McNulty was being quite easy with him.
Yeah, he was quick to rush off, was Daniels.
Yeah. And McNulty was quick to nurse his pint.
Yeah.
And just downing it straight away as he left. I quite like that detail.
And then more sort of bad news for McNulty with his son's volcano losing to some computer, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And then Elena are sort of getting it on him about the alimony payments. And it seems like McNulty is having to pay out quite a lot. Doesn't he say something like $2,000 a month or something, and then another $1,000 for something else?
Yeah. Well, we don't really know how much McNulty makes, but he doesn't have many, apart from alcohol, he doesn't really have that many costs, does he, in his life?
Well, $2,000 a month is
that's
a lot.
An awful lot of money to spend, yeah. And he kind of cites the suit of a Dennis, or Dennis the new suit man, as the reason I've kind of stopped paying you. And tells her that the only reason I started paying those payments is because I believed that we were going to get back together. So
at least he's honest.
Yeah. True that, but it's just pulling him further apart at this point, and yeah, it's not particularly good. And there's a nice little metaphorical volcano explosion as they drive away.
Yeah. As
he wrecks more of their lives.
So that's the McNulty bit. We'll obviously catch up with McNulty a bit later on when we get to the Major Crimes Unit.
Sure.
Let's move on to the Western District. Got a bit more meat here. And we'll start with Major Colvin, who's attending a town hall meeting in his district. When the residents vent their frustration on the rampant drug dealing situation and perceived lack of policing on the community relations sergeant, Colvin steps in and tells them that he doesn't have answers to their questions. Colvin admits everything they've done has failed, and any of the old strategies will still leave the residents at the mercy of the drug war. Cutty and Marlo Daniels are also in attendance at the back. Cutty introduces himself, remarking that Colvin's speech was like pouring gasoline on a fire. As the officers leave, Lieutenant Mello once again asks Bunny what he was thinking.
It's quite good because pouring gasoline on a fire makes sense from a political standpoint, doesn't it? Politically, that's an awful speech to make. But it seems to work with this crowd. They appreciate the honesty like nothing else. And they certainly stop shouting about the stats that they keep getting fed. They're not falling for the stats brush under the carpet line that the the officer who's making the speech goes for. So it's nice that Colvin can step up and bring another soliloquy. He kind of plays the Sobotka role this season. Says that he doesn't know the answer, quite frankly, but knows that it can't be a lie, which is very true to Colvin's nature and lovely to hear as well. Really refreshing.
Maybe he was a little emboldened by the positive reaction and ended up sort of being more right than he realised about not having the answers, because this is probably his only success that he has in the episode for his big plan. Everything else goes horribly wrong.
Yeah. And it was just the case of him being sympathetic to their concerns, the residents' concerns. I guess if you keep getting thrown stat cover-ups, you assume that the police, as far as they're concerned, they're doing a good job and they're getting rid of these criminals. But knowing that they're sympathetic to the actual feelings of the residents must be a really big relief for them, and we get that sense here. And it's nice to see what certainly looks like real residents, honest citizens that have been sort of roped into the show to do some speaking, kind of speaking up and making little speeches here and there about their neighbourhoods.
Yeah, we don't see a whole lot of policing directly with members of the public.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of kind of seeing officers talking to the public much, so this is actually quite a rare scene, really.
Definitely, yeah. And I think there's a few times in the later seasons where we see scenes like this, kind of public meetings, and people really speaking their minds about the streets and the hard life of living there. So really nice to see that. And a really great callback to the pilot as well, with William Gant's cousin, is it? Who's there and says, my cousin Willie Gant testified and he deader than Tupac now.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
So, episode 1 coming back and playing a role.
I was wondering if there was any significance to the opening shot of the Last Supper that then kind of pans down to the community relations sergeant.
Yeah, I guess this is the last meeting before Colvin is about to start committing a departmental crime from which he'll never recover. So, in that respect, you could look at it like that. It's the Last Supper before his demise.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's certainly a nice way to I think, is it the opening scene of the episode? Like, it starts on that Last Supper picture and then pans down. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the opening.
That is nice.
So staying with Colvin.
Have we talked about it's Carcetti and Marlowe as well, isn't it? At the back, have we mentioned?
Oh
those?
yes, at the back, yeah.
Yeah.
So Carcetti's kind of ingratiating himself with the various politicians throughout Baltimore, going to districts that aren't his own. I guess he's just, weighing up, getting himself out there. He wants people to know who he is if he wants to be mayor.
Yeah. So, it was nice, and talking about Watkins and the rest of it, and that Marlon wants to take a run at Unetta Perkins. Everyone kind of knows what's going on in the city, which is nice. And here he is grabbing some ideas for his next Burrell grilling at the Public Safety Subcommittee.
Yeah. He's
all right.
Preparing his next salvo.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we move on to our next.
Looking a bit more at Colvin's plans, what with his retirement coming up. Colvin later meets with the head of security and a director of Johns Hopkins University to discuss moving into a deputy security job there following his retirement. Colvin admits to feeling out of place at Hopkins as he's not used to being around well-to-do academic types. The security director there, a former Baltimore Police Department officer, reassures him that Hopkins is a perfect place to work security after retiring from the department. The two of them joke about the quiet and crime-free, affluent atmosphere among Hopkins students and faculty members. It's just a brief conversation where we have that... is it the head of security, or is it the director? I can't remember which one it is, but the guy who says he has to tinkle.
Yeah.
And apparently we're sort of given this idea about strange academic types and their odd sense of humour.
It's something that the show keeps taking a jab at as well, particularly in season 4. There's a real kind of anti-academic stance we sense here. And talking in riddles is one of the big the big characteristics of the academics.
Yeah.
And we see Colvin's already lining up his next job, the 80k security job, where he'll be a guard at the university here, it seems. And he's forced to review his cheesecake on the spot without much warning, which I'm not sure he enjoys too much. But he's told that it's pretty dull here at the uni. The worst you'll see is a rape.
The worst you'll see is a rape.
It really struck me. It really speaks volumes about his job. And
I think we've said before about desensitization in The Wire. It's like a key thing about it becoming this very particular way. Colvin says it himself. This is the world we've got. And this becoming very normalized to that level of crime. And the worst you'll see is a rape. It's a very, very strange sentence when you think about it.
And he's clearly talking to the guy who used to have his job as well. It's clearly one of the ex-district district majors, who's there to kind of guide him through the retirement job sort of thing. He's gone and done it before. So he clearly is experienced and knows Colvin's position well. So it's nice to see that. I know Cutty talks to one of the ex-mayors at the start of season 4 as well. There's kind of that, definitely echoes of that scene here. As they pass on the wisdom.
So yeah, that's that bit. If you've got nothing else to add, I'll
No, I don't think so. Let's move on, yeah.
So, along with the rest of the Western District, Sergeant Carver's squad cracks down on the drug-dealing crews, trying to move them over to the new free zones. They arrest a dealer, Spider, who identifies himself as Peanut Butter and Jelly, for dropping vials. The dealers refuse their orders and continue to trade on their corners. Colvin decides to order school buses to round up the drug dealers after discussing the problem with Mello. Once Colvin has the young drug dealers in the school gym, he tries to inform them of the free zones. But the dealers are rowdy and disruptive until the principal takes over the microphone and expertly brings them under control. Once she turns the microphone back over to Colvin, however, they are again unwilling to listen.
Well, he did make the mistake of saying learn.
Yeah, it's right as he says that word, there's like upright. You're here to learn.
Oh dear.
There's that volcano again.
Yeah, so true. And it's nice how Prez is the one to kind of explain this scene later on where he says, trick them into thinking they're not learning and they do. So
yes.
The idea that these school kids, they've got the capacity to learn, but the word has so much stigma that you have to just avoid it at all costs. So yeah, a good bunch of scenes. I love the Herc and Carver double act here. It feels like it's at its best and funniest and most chemically. A lot of chemistry, I guess, is the word. And
offering amnesty.
Yeah, not that Herc can remember that word or understand it. But yeah.
And then they have that weird bit where they're like,
Yeah, fantastic.
They're like sort of imitating the guy from earlier. That seems to be all he can say. Definitely,
yeah. And you can't claim that they're not accomplished rough and tumble street police here. They do a really good job of convincing the boys. I mean, well, not that they actually get convinced, but they certainly lay the groundwork for the eventual popularity of Hamsterdam. And they really feel like they're in their element here. They're doing what they do best, the kind of rough and tumble policing. And yeah, it's just a really nice set of scenes, really funny. Our introduction to Spider as well, who calls himself Peanut Butter and Jelly here, I believe, just to avoid any association with his real name. But another peanut. Yes, exactly. I guess that's just putting the point down further, isn't it? But he does have. It's nice that Hamsterdam. Obviously, it comes from these scenes, and the fact that it comes from, in the terms of the show, like a minor source. It's not been created by someone far up or some media outlet. Like the source of that name for it in the show is just some random kind of corner boy. Yeah. And presumably there's a kind of a police being pigs element there. Oh, definitely, yeah. And silly boy ditching his drugs and getting arrested, yeah. Spider bags. Yeah, very true, spider bags. And then later on, I guess we get to we actually have the epigraph. Oh yes,
in
of
this bit
course.
as well.
Yeah.
I guess we'll talk about that more later. But this is the bit where we have fruit. We see this total unwillingness, unwillingness to change. They're so resistant to the system being changed. That's just the way it is. They don't care whether there could be a better outcome. They just feel comfortable. They know who they are in that kind of relationship with the police.
Yeah, I mean, it's odd because the way the Barksdale unit's being run, it would really benefit from Hamsterdam. Marlowe's crew, however, wouldn't, because Marlowe, his USP is ruling through fear, isn't it? And in the legal society, that won't work at all. So I can understand how Fruit really wants it to stay the way it is. But yeah, I'm sure we'll talk more about that in the epigraph discussion in 3 hours' time.
And then Colvin thinks that he can steer all of the people into some school gym and talk at them, and that they're just going to sit quietly and listen. And he's very wrong. Like you say, the moment the word learn appears, it all ends.
Yeah.
And you see as well that they have respect for the principal. They're immediately quiet for her. But they have more respect for the principal than they do for the police.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to see that established authority figure, as you said, tempering the wildest of kids. Sets up some of the stuff we'll see in season 4 quite nicely, with people like Miss Donnelly and Miss Sampson, who we've already met actually, Grace, who have real control over these kids and are the established authority figures. So it's nice to see experts in their field.
And what the principal says does seem to suggest that part of that respect comes from their relationship with the kids' parents. And as I said before, we don't see a lot of the police interacting with the community. They don't necessarily know who these kids are or who their parents are. There's no kind of relationship, social implications to what they might do, because they're essentially just another person on the corner to the police. But in the school, the teachers presumably know the child well. They may know their parents. And she's like, your mother didn't raise you to be whatever. I can't remember exactly what she says. But there's this idea that if they act out of turn, they can't directly punish them as much as they'd like, but they can kind of indirectly do it by passing it on to their parents.
Yeah.
And that is somehow worse than ending up in handcuffs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. A very good point, absolutely, yeah. The handcuffs kind of have a glamorization to them, don't they? Yeah, and it is true though. It's always the school's tactic. You can, dangle the parents into it, and you've got them on the leash. Disappointing those authority figures at home can't be done.
Yeah. Colvin is very unsuccessful here. Like I say, the first bit that he had, his greatest success was with a small group of members of the community just being honest with them, and he doesn't actually offer a solution. Then when he actually tries to come up with one, he's just drowned out. Yeah.
I mean, it is impressive how much effort we get to see Colvin go through to bring him to the point of having Hamsterdam set up, getting the kids to trust him, start complying with his directives, as he puts it, which, again, in hindsight was probably another stupid thing to say to these kids, using kind of bureaucracy speech. But yeah, we've seen 4 solid episodes of Colvin struggling to first establish a motive for setting up Hamsterdam, and now actually having to set it up. It's no easy ride, and it's great how much effort the show goes through to show us Colvin's effort, and when it actually establishes itself, next episode, it really feels earned. It really feels like something that we can kind of invest in.
Yeah, definitely. I was also going to mention from the bit before where we have Hook and Carver, when they talk about Amsterdam, and one of their corner boys is like, Amsterdam, where's that? Herc just responds so plainly, like, it's in one of those countries where drugs are legal. And he just says it so brazenly, like, there's no kind of thought going into this as to like why it might be legal in those countries and how that's set up and everything. It's just kind of, that's the way it is over there, and this is the way it is over here.
Yeah.
There's no sense of like trying to make it change or understand why that is. It's just kind of like, that's just the way it is. And Fruit kind of emphasizes that. Why you got to go and fuck with the program? This is the way that it's supposed to be.
It is so nonchalant, isn't it? And it's not even a correct statement. I mean, he referred to Switzerland and Amsterdam. And on both those counts, I mean, Switzerland isn't a country where drugs are legal. Amsterdam isn't even a country. I feel like if Wallace were there, he'd be able to correct Herc as he corrected D'Angelo about the presidents. But yeah, it's just a completely passing comment, which is a nice observation, definitely.
So yeah, that's that bit. Anything else to say about that?
No, not at all. That's a good little section.
Okay, that brings us on to the Barksdale organisation, starting with Cutty. Cutty continues to work on a landscaping crew. On his way to a job, he sees a car being driven by young drug dealers. And then he learns from his employer that all the other workers are on parole and that the supervisor is an ex-convict himself. The supervisor tells him that every day is hard work for little reward. After this, Cutty tries the phone number that Shamrock gave him for work, but it's disconnected. So he tracks down Slim Charles to where Bodie and Poot share a corner, and he approaches him. They discuss the kind of work he's looking for and then leave to find a weapon for Cutty as Colvin's buses begin rounding up corner dealers. Which kind of ties it into what's going on the rest of the street. So this is the bit with Cutty, and he gets a bit of temptation back into the game as they line up at that red light, and the music blaring, just staring at one another, and Cutty seeing what he could have, or what he may have had before.
Yeah.
And there's just it's temptation after temptation. Like, he's talking to the supervisor, and the supervisor's just totally, giving him the harsh reality. And it's nice how, as he gives him that speech, and he's talking about the way that he used to have it, and used to have some car with nice rims, he doesn't think about it anymore. It's going to be back-breaking work. This is the honest life. And then this is accompanied by all this sort of scraping and sawing of the lawnmower and strimmer blades in the background. It's really like this life is grinding against him somehow. Even the soundtrack to this work is unpleasant.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. And I feel like he's not just giving them a harsh reality, he's practically tempting him back into the criminal world. It really feels like he's pushing him there.
He's not selling it much, is
no,
he?
No.
Yep,
Really.
this is crap. You're right.
And you really sense he's telling him that because he saw Cutty eyeing up that drug wagon next to them. They show you him in the wing mirror. He's looking at Cutty.
He's like taking a little glance.
Yeah, he's clearly thinking about jumping ship right now, isn't he, that Cutty? So it's nice that came through.
But like Colvin, he's brutally honest. He just gives it to him as it is.
Yeah. It's boring. The worst you'll see is an uncut mound of grass. So it's certainly similar to that scene we discussed with when they're talking about taking the next job. Definitely parallels there.
Yeah, with Colvin, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, that scene where they are lined up at the traffic lights is a great scene. It's not subtle at all, but I really like the way it's set up, and there's some really nice camera choices there. And the very exaggerated way they eye up Cutty from their drugmobile, pumping out the tunes. Do they know him from the old days? They almost give him such an eye that there's almost that kind of recognition there. Or are they part of Fruit's crew and know he got screwed over in episode 1? I mean, whatever the reason, Cutty knows the eyes are there to lure him back into the game. So it's nice to see that was laid on very thick. And then we
show the green light.
Yes, absolutely. Announcing his passage back into the game practically. And that's also framed out of focus with the wing mirror as the driver kind of acknowledges what Cutty's going through mentally. So a really nice, completely dialogue-free scene which explains volumes.
Yes, one of the wise strengths.
Yeah.
And then he catches up with Slim Charles down on the corner.
Yeah, it's great.
Nice little bit of respect between him and Bodie as he kind of recognises him. Obviously, Bodie in a bit of a funk at the time.
And he instantly, as soon as he gets off that truck, he just runs to the payphone, doesn't he? Like, he's dropped at the nearest payphone just so he can jump into the Barksdales. He's clearly made his mind up very quickly.
Yeah.
And yeah, as you mentioned, the Slim Charles and Bodie scene is really, really good. And it's the first moment of brilliance from Slim Charles as far as I'm concerned. Like, you have to fall in love with him as a character from this point onwards. As he begs the respect from Bodie.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Bodie doesn't realise who he's talking to.
Yeah.
until Cutty has to explain it for him. And obviously Cutty knew his brother, and obviously a bit of history there, something that happened to James. James been dead. I think that's a very interesting way of putting that. He's been dead.
Yeah, it's like he was dead for a while, but now I've gotten over it, and he's, it's like something in the past. It's not something that stays with me.
Or like, where's he been? Well, he's been dead.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it wasn't just bad grammar in it. There's kind of meaning definitely there, isn't there? And yeah, just good. And Bodhi's face as he does eventually learn who Cutty is. There's that kind of look of surprise and then the nod of approval. Really, really nice to see the way the respect runs through this organisation, enforced heavily by Slim Charles. And
it just raises even more curiosity about what Cutty must have been like when he was in his prime.
Yeah.
We see all these characters with such reverence towards him. Like,
well, maybe he wasn't even the greatest, but it's just the idea that seniority is something that's really revered and respected, and particularly it was in the stevedores, wasn't it? They kept repeating the line about seniority. Perhaps it's kind of a thing of old, and they always need to be respected. Respect your elders.
And in the context of the Barksdale organisation and the street, doing 14 years for your business is pretty admirable.
Yeah.
For them, I guess. 14 years is a very, very long time. I mean, it's really soaking it in here throughout this episode how long it's been since Cutty's been involved. We'll cover it in the next section when he starts talking about the guns he used to use, and used to know Bodhi's brother when Bodhi was kind of still a little kid. So it really emphasise how long it's been, because Bodhi's only meant to be like 16 or 18.
I think
or
he's
something like
18 in season 3. He was 16 in the first season. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been a real long time. Yeah. So obviously Slim Charles walks Cutty off to get some chrome, and he's now part of the gang.
Yeah, what work are you looking for? Anything that pays. But he, realises how he doesn't really mean that. As he goes to get the work that he's assigned, he realises that that's not what he's looking for. He's not looking for anything that pays anymore.
He's looking for something that will keep him occupied, I guess, isn't he, really?
And that something is what we see him first doing in this episode, where he's boxing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
The very first thing that he's doing is kind of having a little session with his punch bag. He's really going at it. We kind of see his passion for something really come out there, and how energised he is by it, whereas the rest of the episode he's kind of quite placid and a bit disappointed and trying to find new ways, and desperation pushing him on to paths that I think even he kind of knows he probably doesn't want to. He's in it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, definitely. It's lovely how the show sets up that boxing passion from the start, and it's clear that at the moment Cutty doesn't know how to translate that passion into something that will contribute to society or contribute to his sense of worth. And it's only once he's been through the Barksdale game again, and really has to dig deep for something new to do, that he, creates the boxing gym with the help of Avon, with the help of Carver a little bit as well, I think. So it's a good arc for Cutty this season.
So should we move on to the next bit?
Yeah.
With a bit more Cutty. So Gerard, Sapper, Slim Charles and Cutty survey one of their dealers who's been short on his count. Cutty suggests that the dealer has a girlfriend, she's likely where his money is being spent. Later, Bodhi hosts a party to celebrate Cutty's return, and Shamrock and Slim Charles accompany them, and the party is packed with lots of women and drugs. Cutty comments that he is surprised that Avon lets them get high, and Bodhi remarks that sometimes they have to. Then Bodhi surprises Cutty with some women to welcome him back home. And it does look a little bit like somebody's brought their dad to the party when Cutty turns up. He looks very out of place.
Yeah.
He's just kind of like, goodness me, such debauchery.
Definitely, yeah. Really, I mean, as you were saying earlier, that the clear differences between the old and new. There are a lot of parallels drawn between those two here. And as you say, that his sense of discomfort of walking around this alien planet almost at this club, brothel. It looks like a club downstairs, brothel upstairs. Just a real, not the sort of initiation he was used to back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And he was also pretty taken aback that they are able to do. I think they were doing weed, weren't they, in the before Cutty got sent down to the bedroom.
Yeah.
And that's just something that, the discipline of the old would never allow that. So
we see him really drinking that beer. Like, it's obviously been a long time, having been in prison all that time. It's probably been quite a while since he, got high or had a drink, or
and females as well.
Never had the reason to. Exactly, yeah. Even though he does still look a little bit bit out of his depth. Like, I guess having been that long, it's going to be hard to resist.
Yeah, definitely. And I love the employment of POV shots here, which is something that Wyatt only does here, I think. Is that right? It's never again that we see this sort of thing. If there is, please remind me.
It really tries to draw us into the unfamiliarity of that landscape, kind of seeing it through his eyes. It's very dreamlike, all this sort of slow motion stuff. And
yeah, it's odd because it's not overtly slow motion. Nothing's happening in slow motion, but it does feel very dreamy and very trippy. And I can't quite explain why. But it is quite a surreal scene, really. So that's one of the few times that it breaks. I guess the show does break its own rules. In season 3, it becomes very consistent with the camera work. But this is one of the few times where it does take on a different theme.
Something about it felt a bit claustrophobic as well. The camera's very close to all the characters. We feel like we're stuck in a lot of small rooms and corridors.
Yeah.
And it does have that sort of basement club feel.
There's a fishbowl sort of thing going on.
Where everyone's just rammed in together and it's all sweaty and loud and it smells of weed and, you kind of really get that. You really get that kind of claustrophobic club-like atmosphere.
Definitely, yeah. But it was also quite exciting, just the immersion of being put there on a night out with Bodhi, Shamrock and Slim. It sounds like quite a fun thing to do. And they're clearly all enjoying themselves. And they obviously, we'll get to this later, but they contrast this scene quite nicely with McNulty's night out at the bar during this scene. So, but yeah, that scene is it feels quite arty and quite atmospheric. So yeah, and very evocative of, I think, Amsterdam imagery feeding into the title. The drugs and the red lights and the sex and the way everything's on display. There's no concept of privacy up here by the looks of it. Everyone's just banging on display with the doors wide open. It's really quite strange.
I'm sure that we've both been to Amsterdam, and I don't remember seeing anyone having sex with the doors open.
No, not at all. But just the not taken so literally, but the idea of the theming and what not kind of more of a stereotypical output of Amsterdam, I guess. But yeah.
But yeah, it tries to create that sense. And earlier on, when they're in the car as well, they're trying to emphasise that length of time again, where Cutty says that he was used to revolvers. That shows how long it's been. Like he says, was it a 38 don't jam?
Don't hold 15 neither.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But he's he's got the experience to be able to point out that it may be the girlfriend of the dealer that they're looking for, and we see later on the way that he deals with that is very old school as well.
Yeah, I don't think
proper slap.
Does he slap her in this episode? I think it's next one, isn't it?
No, it's in the next one.
Yeah, but it's a very memorable scene. It's very, yeah, absolutely. It takes everyone else by surprise, and it's nice that he's the one that comes up with that suggestion. I think everyone else is very concerned with the idea of material worth and bling in terms of spending money. Where's this money coming from? He thinks about the girl, perhaps a more old school source of money spending. That is the case now.
So yeah, that's Cutty's section.
And let's not just forget to mention Slim Charles's magic moment number 2. Twice in one episode. Game the same, just got more fierce.
Oh yeah.
It's such a fantastic response to why have I got to have a Glock rather than a revolver.
Yeah, it's brutal out there now. You're going to need more than 6 rounds.
Yeah. Stat game again. Get the numbers up.
Yeah, get those numbers up. Or, well, it's normally numbers down, but...
Well, the street want the numbers up, the police want the numbers down, so...
Yeah.
It all depends.
But let's move on to Stringer Bell,
Yeah.
who's meeting with Andy Krawczyk, his property consultant, and State Senator Clay Davis. They discuss Stringer's property in up-and-coming areas and plans for developing them as residences. McNulty observes the meeting from outside the restaurant. Stringer then finally meets with Donette and learns that McNulty has been to see her. Stringer reassures her that Avon's name would have been enough to protect D'Angelo and tells that he doesn't want to keep her at arm's length any longer. Shamrock picks Stringer up and receives his instructions about handling the receipts, and that if Donette calls, Stringer will take the call this time. So starting with Stringer and his little meet with the developers and Clay Davis, who becomes very instrumental in his rise and fall. And it's very fortunate that they've taken a very convenient window seat, and McNulty's peering in with some absolutely massive binoculars and making no attempt to be sort of secretive at all. He's just there munching on, it looks like it's like folded up pizza or something.
Yeah, he's just grabbed himself a Domino's and gone for a little stakeout.
He's just really brazenly, I don't know, maybe it's a very meaty pizza, but yeah. But he's having a proper, feast there, and he's totally brazen. He's not even trying to hide himself.
I don't
I
know.
think he'd go for slightly smaller binoculars when you're, that close to a restaurant, peering in through the window.
It was a long zoom, though. I get the sense that he was really far down the line, that he'd be in no danger of Stringer having kind of micro vision and seeing him. But yeah, I know what you mean. That it did feel like he was quite in the open with the way they kind of filmed it. But I feel that the scene overall was quite a shock as well. Just we're suddenly put into this restaurant, an environment we're not used to at all in the show, and Stringer sat down with characters that we've met before, Andy Krawczyk and Clay Davis. This is quite a major revelation. He's playing Wall Street, as they say, and talking about not only buying property but investing in it and making it far more valuable than they would, not just flipping it for the federal payout like they used to in season 1. They're now really taking it seriously and becoming property developers.
Well, I'm not sure that a restaurant is an environment we're not used to, because we've had restaurant scenes with the Greeks. We've had restaurant scenes with D'Angelo in the first season where he goes out with Donette. We have scenes where they go to diners and things like that. Yeah,
no, it's true. It's just that the coupling it up with Stringer is certainly a major twist in the tale, and when you consider his company as well. But
yeah, it's pretty high-powered people in that meeting.
And this restaurant certainly looks like the creme de la creme, a really top-of-the-range place.
So yeah, Stringer trying to go legit, and then he ends up having to make reparations with Donette, who we believe he's essentially been ignoring her for goodness knows how long.
Yeah. I mean, the show really does revel in surprising us as much as McNulty this episode, and he's been wound up with the street until now, and as you say, he goes to see Donette eventually, and she gives him. I think the whole time she's been wanting to tell him about McNulty's visit, hasn't she? Regarding D'Angelo. And
Stringer is very quick to shut that down.
Yeah.
He's obviously, he just crumples it right up and he's like, you don't speak to this man.
Yeah, it makes
see a bit of worry in his face.
I thought that was quite a bad response from him. It certainly made it quite obvious to Donette that he was possibly involved. If he felt that.
No, I don't think Donette has any clue. She doesn't seem like she's really that clued up on what's going on.
No,
I can't imagine her clocking that.
But I don't know. Yeah, it just seems like he wouldn't be so emotionally involved with it if he, if he was distanced from it. Thankfully Donette doesn't care. Thankfully from Stringer's perspective. But I feel like that was not the most clever way to deal with rationalizing D'Angelo's death and saying that it's all to do with, everyone loves him and no one would ever try to kill him.
It's almost just towing the line, isn't it? Those are the lines. The lines are that family this and protected by Avon that, and the police only want to hurt you the other.
Yeah, it's just kind of a set of rules that are rigid. There's no possibility of them being false. This is what's real. Listen to it, Donette, sort of thing, yeah. And she certainly buys into it. And we certainly get the sense that he's now going to not keep her at arm's length, to keep her pretty about this, so that she doesn't go blabbing to anyone else about D'Angelo. She could easily go and phone up Avon or something like that if Stringer doesn't give her the attention that she wants.
Yeah.
So it's certainly a nice move to keep seeing her now. But maybe
he's lucky it wasn't too late.
Yeah, he did wait a long time, didn't he? Certainly. Or maybe he does want to settle down with a lady now. I mean, he's been very business focused, but maybe he does feel like it's time to go and see Donna again.
Quite harsh that they have that. They have quite a sort of passionate kissing scene, and then it slowly moves over to the side where we see the portraits and the photos with D'Angelo.
Yeah, the show's already played that card, hasn't it? But it's no less brutal to see it again.
It's interesting that it uses that same idea again. I wonder if they did it again on purpose, or whether they, at the time, maybe didn't think that it had already been done that way before. I don't know. I doubt that it's an accident.
It's definitely good to do it a second time, because it means something quite different on this occasion, because so much has changed. D'Angelo's gone. Stringer's the one that did the doing. And therefore it's more of a betrayal on Stringer's behalf than Donette's behalf, because last time it was more of an infidelity thing. And now it's something a little bit more grim than that.
So, and I guess the final part is just the bit with Shamrock, and he's just kind of giving him instructions about handling the receipts. I guess Stringer trying to pass off a bit more of the actual, trying to palm off work to others, so that, like you say, maybe he does want to settle down. He wants to be able to pass these things on to other people so that he can just make his money and own his property and be able to give those jobs to other people now.
Try and distance himself.
That just increases his legitimacy, because, like you say, he's distancing himself from the actual drugs themselves, from any of the kind of work or anything like that.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Good point. That delegation. And probably shouldn't have given up control of the receipts, though. As we know, Bernard is in control of them. He's mentioned here by Shamrock. We haven't met him yet, but he does fall foul of Lester's investigations later, and is actually responsible for cracking open the case wide and getting Stringer's phone tapped and the rest of it. So it's one of the worst decisions he makes, actually, even though it's a small one at this point.
So that's about it for the Barksdale organisation, unless there's something you'd like to add.
No.
About that whole bit in general?
No, not at all. Let's push on.
Yeah, so our final bit is also our largest section, which is the major case unit. Starting with McNulty and Greggs, and they want their informant Bubbles to check the lay of the land in the Western District, particularly where the Barksdale crew is now working. They offer him $5 an hour or 30 for a day's work. Over the course of his day, Bubbles observes Marlo Stanfield talking to Fruit and memorises his license plate number. Bubbles then reports that the Barksdale organisation is sharing territory for the most part, but that Marlo has the Lower Avenue corners and that the Poe homes nearer to the city all to himself. He divulges Marlo's plate number in return for a little more cash, and then when they run the plate number at the detail office, they find that it is registered to an older woman across town. Greggs checks the name and finds that Marlo Stanfield is 22 and has a record. So Bubbles doing a bit of work.
Yeah, and that's immediately after seeing... well, I guess they start with their McDonald's breakfast, don't they?
Yeah.
Which is nicely paralleled with Cutty boxing and exercising.
And we hear quite a bit about Bubbles' early days, where he was like working at this sort of cheapest man in town store, some electronics store or something. And we kind of hear about his times before he was deep in the game, just kind of being a dope fiend, I guess.
Yeah, and it gives a lot of background on why he feels so out of place in the street. I think he does feel like a very unique character in the ghetto.
Yeah.
And he's old enough to be of that generation that we predominantly saw in the meeting with Colvin, actually. A sense of the morals of the older days that have remained with him. And, therefore he's a different breed himself on the street, and getting a nice
and it's
payroll.
not all he knows.
Yeah.
I guess that's the key thing with Bubbles, is that because he's had, this job, and he talks about it's been a while since he punched the clock. It's not all he knows. He's kind of lived a working life as well, and like you say, he's reached that age and got that experience, but he still has that negative view of himself when he says, "That's me, I'm a born fuck up." He acknowledges that, despite him having all this experience and whatnot, and all the jobs that he's done, that hasn't really got him into any better position.
Yeah.
He knows that he's deep in being a dope fiend.
Yeah, his self-esteem has been at rock bottom ever since. We get the sense of, even if his morals haven't changed.
Yeah.
And again, something very pointless. Started off his downward spiral, stealing a clock radio from like a trash can. Is that what he said? Something like that.
Yeah.
And that sounds like the start of his unemployment, the start of his downward spiral. Again, as with many things in The Wire, something so small creates something so big and painful, really.
But he's doing a bit of service here as he memorises that number plate.
Yeah, and
or license plate, as I should call it. That's what it is in America.
He does seem
license plate.
License plate. He does seem very happy with himself as well. He really smiles. He really has, puts on a big smile when he sees that number plate, and he knows that he's got a bonus in his hand. He's going to be able to negotiate for a bonus, which he absolutely manages to walk away with.
Yeah, he's got a bit of an enterprising streak and kind of treating it like a real job, going for his bonus already after his first job.
Yeah.
But I guess they're happy to give it to him. They know that he provides good information.
Yeah, definitely.
And then they are able to track that vehicle, and they manage to get Marlowe's age and his record that he's got.
So good man, Bubs.
And also, Bubbles talks about Marlowe being known as Black. And it's not really discussed or mentioned that much past this episode, I don't think. The whole nickname of Black for Marlowe doesn't really ring true that much. You don't really hear anyone call him that.
Yeah, I think it is for a few episodes at the start of season 3. Yeah, I like to think that that's because Marlowe insists on being called by his name. As he says later on, "My name is my name." He doesn't want anything less to be thought of him. He is Marlowe. He is to be feared, and he's nothing less. So that may well have been his younger days kind of nickname, as many of these street dealers do have.
It's just that Bubbles says something like it's Marlowe been going by the name of Black, or people been calling him by the name of Black, something like that. And you don't really actually ever hear anyone call him that. So
yeah, definitely.
It's kind of strange that they use this little nickname and it never really shows. It's kind of not clear where that comes from. Presumably, almost certainly Marlowe didn't come up with it. So
no.
And most of the people close to him probably didn't either, because they're likely to know that it's not something he'd be interested in. So
yeah, it is curious, definitely. But yeah, I mean,
because of his headband, because of his black cold heart.
I thought that as well. I think his headband changes colour, though, isn't it? Is it not? Is it always black? I'm not too sure. But yeah, I mean, it's quite a good name for him, I guess. When you mention the heart.
Yeah.
And nice to see the way that Bubs gathered that information as well. Like, he walked around sampling the testers to see which crew had the best stuff, and then decide, that once you find the one with the best product, you then chase them, because they're going to be the ones that are worth tracking down.
No wonder he was more excited. He kind of was more clued into it than Johnny, because he knew that he could essentially, get high and get paid for it.
Yeah, that's true. Just Johnny's moral compass is a bit more wayward, and yeah, he's run away at this point. He's nowhere to be seen, very tellingly. Yeah, so yeah, good to see that Bubs is
so that's that bit.
Responsible for the police interest in Marlowe, which will pervade through the police until the end of the show. So quite an important milestone, really.
So then McNulty and Greggs check in at the detail office, and Freeman quizzes them about where they've been. Then Freeman angrily tells McNulty he owes Lieutenant Daniels some loyalty after all Daniels has done for him. McNulty tells Freeman that Stringer is who they should be after, and Freeman argues that McNulty and his self-destructive streak is all-consuming, and the two appear to come to blows almost. Greggs breaks them up, earning a lashing from Freeman, who reminds her that Daniels brought her up in the job. So this is just the bit where we have quite a big altercation between Freeman and McNulty, and you kind of see the fact that they're very similar, and they had a very similar attitude, but because Freeman's much older, and he's been through all of what McNulty's done, you do feel like when Freeman was always younger, he was probably a lot more like McNulty. But as a result, Freeman knows that now that he has got a position of stability, now they are being given the opportunity to do real police work, they shouldn't throw it away with the same kind of thinking that gained that for them, because they might end up losing it the same way.
Yeah.
They managed to create it by being a bit disruptive and by Daniels getting that favour. But if they continue it now that they've got the major case unit, they're actually going to end up losing it again by being disrupted. They're just going to prove that they're just a nuisance, and not that isn't what they wanted. They just want to create trouble. Freeman can sense that in McNulty.
Definitely, yeah. And I think it's overall of this anger with McNulty's pride, really. And very tense. Freeman really explodes at this point, the only time we see him do so in the show. And, telling them that don't pretend you're speaking for the job right now, you're speaking for yourselves. And Kima really is caught up between the two here in quite an awkward scene for her. Ultimately feeling more loyal to McNulty at this point. I think they've spent a lot of time with each other in the past week or so, from what we've seen in the episodes.
And an important line from Lester to McNulty about setting fire to everything and walking away whilst it burns.
Yeah.
That's McNulty all over.
Really cutting. It's kind of like life lesson number 1, really, because he does give McNulty another life lesson not far down the line that pushes him towards a more stable existence, I guess. And he does get the inspiration to go and see Beadie again, who I think when he visited her house in season 2, he kind of saw some sort of domestic stability that he didn't want to interrupt. I'm sure we chatted about that. And later on he will go and try and find that again and try and become part of it.
Yeah, he's ready for it that time.
Yeah. I appreciate that we're jumping ahead a few episodes here, but I like the fact that these scenes do feel linked, and this feels like it's laying the groundwork for it. So, yeah. And Freeman reminding Kima that Daniels raised her from a pup, so in many ways she's actually betraying more than McNulty is in many senses. And the thing that I love about the scene, though, is the fact that it clearly wasn't about the fact that Stringer was being chased for Freeman, and we see as soon as they leave, check on those fucking properties. Like, Freeman is carrying out just as an intense investigation of Stringer that McNulty and Kima are doing, obviously on a more paper trail style, because that's what Freeman does, and Kima and McNulty are obviously sticking to their physical detective work. But then we realise that the real difference and the problem Freeman has is the explicit defiance, the sing and dance and self-righteousness that McNulty is sapping from the situation. And clearly Freeman understands the importance of chasing Stringer, but also doing it respectfully and hiding it from the bosses. So it's really nice to see that distinction.
Yeah, Freeman's got the real ability to keep his actions covert, to be that house cat figure that's sort of working diligently away and no one really notices that he's there.
Yeah.
That's obviously a skill that he's got.
And doing it for the work rather than for his ego. Absolutely.
And whereas before we see in the previous episode Greg's understanding, or even saying out loud that she's becoming McNulty, she learns a little bit more about what it is to be McNulty when she says to him about feeling like shit with the whole Freeman thing. And McNulty's response is, well, you get used to it.
Mm.
And then I think she really questions whether that's how she wants to treat the situation. Is this something that I just accept? If I have to have some major altercation with someone that is important to me, that I should just get over it.
No interest in building bridges.
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly adds another layer to the McNulty. You can understand why you'd end up self-loathing yourself if you kept on living like this. And clearly it's what McNulty wants. He wants to punish himself. And Everyone around him, as Freeman says, you're setting fire to everyone, and Bunk reminds him of it as well in season 1. Good for people, and it's just all coming back here again. And it's nice that, as you say, Kima is learning this the hard way and perhaps reconsidering her stance on McNulty at the moment.
That and her approach to the relationship that she has at work. She wants that stability and that friendship and that building bridges, like you say, with the people that she works with. But obviously not having any interest in that in her actual domestic life. She doesn't feel like shit about the whole Cheryl thing. She doesn't feel bad about their complete absence for that situation.
Yeah, I don't know. I think she may feel bad, but she certainly doesn't want the life that Cheryl is living. I'm sure she feels bad about leaving or the rest of it, but it wasn't her, perhaps. So
well, certainly she doesn't really express that to anyone anyway.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a bit of a different situation with Kima and Cheryl.
So let's continue with Greg's, moving us on. Greg's visits the homicide unit to question Detective Holly about Marlowe's previous investigation. Marlowe was up for a murder charge but escaped conviction by killing a witness named Pooh Bear despite Holly's efforts to protect him. Holly described Stanfield as pure evil. The next day, Greggs reports to McNulty that Marlowe is a killer and theorises that he may be working for Stringer. Greg spends the day with Bubbles mapping out the territories of the drug dealers. She also learns that the dealers are using burners, which are disposable prepaid mobile phones. So hearing about yet more brutality on the part of Marlowe, and that he is able to escape a murder charge by committing murder, which takes that level of ruling by fear that you mentioned before.
Yeah, the Vernon Holly's description. Yeah. And he explained how he found one of Marlowe's victims shot with 2 in the chest and 1 in the mouth, which is Marlowe's signature that we will see again this season. I think when he shoots Devon, is that it? Who's one of the Barksdale plants. She's like kind of a female temptation for him to try and exploit his weakness, which he doesn't have. He doesn't have a weakness for the females either. So it's nice that he mentions that, and it's a really, really, even for a murder police, that's a real sight to see someone shot in the mouth. So Vernon does consider him the spawn of the devil, and the show really establishes some high stakes for the Marlowe character. He's established as dangerous right from the start.
It seems also a little telling that Greggs is theorising about Marlowe working for Stringer, and that she could not be more wrong. And it's quite telling of where the major case unit is at this point. Even though it's been established right from the beginning of the season, it's not like they've had to build their way up to having the detail like we had in season 1, for example, where we start from the very beginning, and then we have other details sort of build up over time in the seasons. Here in season 3, we've got major case unit right from the beginning. They've not made that much progress, really. Like at this stage, they've blown their wire, and they don't even they don't really know that much about Marlowe other than his age and that he's got a car and that he has a record and that he's able to kind of escape various murders, but they don't know that much about his position on the street. They're making completely wrong assumptions about his relation with the other major players. They're not really building much of a case at the moment.
No, it's tricky. They seem to have gone in reverse, haven't they? All the other seasons, or at least the other 2, started with an investigation that kicked off and gradually ramped up, whereas now we started with a wire-heavy investigation that it crashed and burned very quickly. And as you say, we're now back at square one, and it was quite telling when we saw Greggs make that assumption about Marlowe working for the Barksdales. They hold this reverence for Stringer, that he is the be-all and end-all of drug lords. I'm sure they got that image from working with him in season 1 at the low-rises, and just the sense that he was the king of the towers and the rest of it. And little do they know that they'll soon find out how ruthless he is. That he is.
Suppose that.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
No, that he is just one of the independents that Bubs refers to. Anyway, yeah. So.
Yeah, I was going to say that in contrast to the earlier seasons, especially season 1, where the detail, like you say, kind of gets this investigation and builds, we, the audience, know there is more information to be had because we understand the context of the street a lot more, and we know more about the characters and what's going on the street. rather than having to get to know the detail. We know the street now. So even though they haven't made much progress, we know there's a lot of progress that can be made. We kind of know what it is they could know, if you catch my meaning.
Yeah.
We know that through investigation, there's all these things they could find out. Whereas in season 1, we're still learning ourselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess they've not made that much progress, but we know that it's still building, it's still coming to something, because we see all of these actions and all of these relationships that they are going to find out eventually, even if it does take them a couple of seasons in some cases.
Yeah, and a good thing to note is that, as you say, the show showed us things that the detail could know if they made investigations. The show was very balanced between Barksdale and the police, whereas now we have this other street institution, and we're really getting bits and pieces. We're really held back from their activities, and they're really...
I guess, yeah, Marlowe kind of has that new Avon element to it, I suppose.
Exactly, and
that we had in season 1.
There's no better way to build a shroud of mystique around someone, I guess, than to not show them much. And in this episode, I don't think there's any scenes from the perspective of the Stanfield crew, is there? I know that they use Fruit as kind of a Marlowe surrogate in the first few episodes, so that they don't have to play the Marlowe card too early. But they really do keep things away from us as far as Marlowe goes, and that really adds to the sense of danger that both... Well, I guess the detail are too far behind to even understand that danger at this point. We certainly get a sense of it.
And it's not like in the last 2 seasons where we have scenes that are almost initiated by Marlowe. Like it's a scene of Marlowe, or a scene of Marlowe that's not been initiated by someone else. I guess there's one example where we see him in the rim shop, and it's just him and the guy in the rim shop. That's kind of like a rare earlier scene where it's a scene that's kind of more about Marlowe rather than having some other character visit him.
Yeah, that's true.
Whereas in season 4 and season 5, there's kind of quite a few where it's more about the organisation, and now that the detail draws closer, we draw closer too.
Definitely, yeah. So we're certainly more on the same level as the detail in terms of our knowledge, which is nice, yeah.
But instead of them making a load of progress and us learning through that, we're learning a lot more through the street and seeing how far it is they've got to go. But I just thought it was interesting that even though they've been established for quite some time, they've just not made a lot of progress.
There's no system on the street. It's a free for all at the moment, and for the most part, it's not violent because the word from the higher ups is against violence, and it's only now that Marlowe is bringing some system back to the street that we're going to start seeing changes and some things that the detail can cotton onto. So yeah.
And then we have the little bit where Greggs finds out about the burners.
Yeah.
So we're learning what these are.
Yeah, the show. I mean, they haven't. It'd be nice if they threw some of this into the first 3 episodes as well, but they certainly don't skimp on a lot of burner shots in the first half of this episode, just to lay the groundwork for when Greggs mentions it. Oh, I see these phones being thrown away all week, and it's nice that I do enjoy Freeman's speech about the street changing up, the survival of the fittest, that they adjust just as we adjust. So, yeah, it's very good.
So let's move on to another new bit, if you're ready.
Yeah, sure.
So Daniels visits Perlman at her office. She gives him some bad news. Avon is up for parole. And then they have a bit of a flirt. Levy then sails his client, Avon, through his parole hearing because of the deal that he made during his sentence, despite Perlman's letter to the parole board. There's just a little bit there. I said before, we've seen some bad flirting, if you can even call it that, but we have sort of a nice little moment here where they get very distracted from their work.
Yeah, it's great. They're kind of reading letters, but they're actually looking at each other whilst, it's this idea of distraction really nicely put forward. There's a lot of chemistry between these two.
It's very shortly after they've got together, so I guess they're still very giddy about the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a real honeymoon phase.
As one tends to be.
Yeah. And yeah, they don't even seem to care too much about the crushing blow of Avon's imminent release. It's really tempered by this affection, this giddiness that you mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really distracted by it.
And another scene of lots of facial close-ups just to really expand the point. Daniel's looking very besotted as he leans over the desk, and Perlman really giving him the "your suit is fantastic, Daniels."
So yeah, and just a very small bit of Levy as well, who we have seen very little of in this season.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I didn't take any notes on this, but this is when Avon is just discussing the terms of his release, basically, and making it clear to the audience that Avon is on the way out and will be having an impact this season, I guess.
So let's move on. We have another little bit with McNulty, with the MCU. McNulty visits the college where Stringer is taking an economics class to obtain information about him. McNulty matches the cell phone number from the school's records to Stringer by calling him after class. Stringer answers the phone using the name of his front organisation, B&B. Meanwhile, Freeman has Prez checking property purchasing records for the same business. So 2 means of getting hold of Stringer's number, which allows Freeman to kind of beat Jimmy to it. He has all the information when he arrives later on. But we've already seen that McNulty knows about Stringer's schooling.
Yes, absolutely, and it is nice that we only see one side of that race for the Stringer. I guess we do see a little bit of Prez going in and digging up the info. It just shows how simple it is when you do know how to do the paper chase. And it's not something that McNulty really is trained up for. It's not really him. And it's fantastic to see Freeman put McNulty in his place and just quote the number to him. Like, the number wouldn't be 0754 or whatever. It's just absolutely fantastic. And McNulty goes from kind of annoyance straight through to I respect you a lot. You're a great policeman. And
yeah, so that's that bit's actually covered by the next little bit.
Oh, sorry, right,
now
yeah.
to cover that.
No, not at all. I mean, I'm sure we can discuss the bit where he phones up Stringer because that's also a good scene.
Yeah, I was thinking also where we have Perez with that guy at who has the property purchasing records, and he's talking about some drink, B&B.
Oh yes,
yeah. Bourbon and something.
Bourbon and Baileys or something, yeah.
Yeah, he's just kind of thinks that he's talking about some drink or something. I don't know whether he's meant to be some senile old guy who works at the paper trail place. Like there's a lot of those characters where they've been put out to pasture in these like dull record keeping offices and stuff.
Yeah, that was cool to see. And obviously, I think B&B. I don't think it's ever explicitly explained in the show, but as far as fans are aware, it stands for Barksdale and Bell.
Yeah, it's got to be, isn't it?
It has to be, really. Yeah, which is a really nice add-on. It's the sort of thing that you'd only get sort of down the line. It would just sort of occur to you and like, oh yeah. So yeah, a good scene, and love seeing McNulty's face as he plays Stringer with the number, and also plays the violence to women card to tempt the college receptionist to give him away Stringer's number. Yeah,
pretty underhanded, but it gets him what he wants. And then, obviously, like you say, a nice little bit where he calls him after class, just leaves that silence hanging, making him think.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I mean, he's very excited here. As we'll discover, the excitement's going to turn to lots of disappointment when he discovers that number is, for purposes only, legitimate. But yeah, it's good to see McNulty back in the swing of things and doing the things that we love him for and respect him for. And also seeing Stringer on the college PCs as well. We see him in college occasionally, and I just imagine him doing like group projects at school and stuff like that, and like the people that he must work with have no idea who he really is. I really wish we could have seen some aspects of that at college. Yeah,
that would have been cool.
That would have been really nice.
We do see a small scene earlier in, is it season 2, where he kind of chats to his, or is it season 1 where he's talking to the economics teacher?
That's right,
he's talking about an elastic product.
That's it. I think there is
we
one.
kind of see him around his students there.
And I don't think we hear the conversation, but there is one scene where we see him leaving the college, and he's like talking to a girl in his class or something, and then they like part ways, and he picks up the phone and phones Avon or something like that. But I thought that was a really nice kind of allusion to his social life at the college.
Yeah. So yeah, let's move on to that next little bit, seeing as we touched on it a bit already.
Yeah.
McNulty reports his results to the rest of the unit. Freeman impresses McNulty by revealing that Prez's record search had also turned up Stringer's phone number, as well as property registered in his own name. Apparently, Stringer is trying to build a legitimate business presence as a property developer. Greggs brings up the disposable cell phones, and McNulty worries about how they can wiretap phones with such short working lives.
Well, you can't.
Yeah.
That's why they're using them.
Difficult.
Yeah.
They're adapting.
They learn and
like
adjust.
The Borg.
Yeah, definitely. And as I mentioned before, the Freeman schooling moment, where not only does Freeman beat McNulty to the number, but he also explains that thanks to our paper trail investigation, which was actually a lot more thorough than yours, because we discovered a lot of information about him. We got all the calls he's made recently. And we can obviously track where all those calls go to, and we see that all of them are to developers and contractors and building material suppliers and legitimate things, which is a very...
Yeah, they've kind of created a bit of a case around it, whereas McNulty was focused on getting some kind of prize-winning piece. I have the phone number, the precious phone number. He's used it in some little game. He's called him up. He's very proud of what he's collected. He's not really tried to build any kind of investigation or case around that. It's just, look, I've got a phone number.
It's just this string of vendetta, isn't it, that's getting in the way of what could be a much more wholesome investigation.
It just makes me think about whether or not, because if you think way back, like they brought McNulty on. Daniels kind of made that concession to bring McNulty on because Freeman and Bunk persuade him into doing it because they think that he's too much of a fuck up to not be on the case. He's kind of not able to handle being high and dry like that. So it's supposedly meant to make him better. The closest he is to being right is when he's on the case. But in a way, it also makes him worse. Like, it actually makes him more megalomaniacal about the whole thing, that he's got to make these grand statements. He's got to prove to everyone how smart he is. And especially with all the turmoil that he's got going on with his relationship with Elena and the troubles that he's no longer got Rhonda to lean on. And it's actually kind of making him worse in some ways. The case is making him more wrapped up in his own mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not good that it spurs his ego. But equally, what would he be doing if he wasn't doing the investigation, if he wasn't involved in police work that made him feel like he mattered? He'd probably be sitting in the bar all day long and drinking himself to death a lot quicker than he would have done otherwise. So it's hard to tell without, because that's what he was doing in season 2. They made that point with him spending that entire opening sequence just being mentally drunk. And crashing his car and banging the waitress and injuring himself and the rest of it. Like that was kind of him without anything constructive to do. And I mean, the ego is at the lesser of the two evils there. Really, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I suppose it's just hard to see McNulty bigging that up and taking it out on Freeman, when Freeman was one of the people that vouched for him that kind of got him in the detail in the first place.
Yeah.
It was only because of their persuasion that it even happened.
It certainly doesn't make the betrayal any sweeter, yeah. It's not nice at all. Horrible character trait.
And I like the bit with Freeman and Prez, where they're like, he's worse than a drug dealer, he's a developer.
Yeah. Yeah, the hate figure, and we'll see a lot more of that as well in season 3, with Clay coming a lot more fully fledged as a character, as kind of this semi-developer. And let's not forget that his relationship with these developer guys or these political Krawcheck, Clay Davis figures is already set to lose. Like, they're taking advantage of his business naivety, and they will eventually grab his money and run.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's another one of those signs which says in that book, actually, in Truth Be Told, in the little bit where David Simon's talking about their pitching of The Wire. He talks about The Wire being a very angry show and that it was always trying to make a point. It was always trying to stir something up. And this is just another one of those times where you can tell that the opinion of the show is like the show itself has an opinion. This ire towards developers is clearly one of those angry aspects.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Going in and turning all these properties into luxury condos or whatever, not really considering about the people that might want to live there, the people that did live there, whether the people that will now be living there are sort of doing anything about creating any kind of sense of community or maintaining any of its history or culture, or they're just doing it to make loads of money, and they're taking advantage of all sorts of people in the process.
Yeah, that gentrification effect, and it's something that's being seen all over, particularly in London at the moment as well, where I am. It's just it's absolutely rampant, and it's very difficult.
It's happening in Liverpool too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's lots of, particularly in that Baltic Triangle area, right, and all around.
Well, that's not so bad because that was basically just a wasteland. Because, I mean, those of you who don't know much about Liverpool, similarly to Baltimore, it's got all these kind of old dock bits that are not in use anymore. And although the Albert Docks, which is kind of the more maintained historical bit, is really nice, there's loads of like big empty space where there just used to be loads of industrial stuff. And there isn't anymore. But now they're trying to create a nice creative hub there because it's quite large warehouses that people use for studios and the like, so it's quite nice. But when you think about areas around Vostok Square where the Casimir is, like it's all these old areas that have been turned into quite cool venues and nice little places, like music venues and places that run cultural events and arts clubs and all this sort of strain of thing, and they're all getting knocked down to get replaced by people who want to pump a load of money into big residential places.
Yeah. Because the Casimir's going, isn't it, in New Year's Day?
Yeah.
Which is one of Liverpool's main music events, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes the figures look good. It's bringing money into the city, but...
Yep. And they've promised to rebuild Cream. I'm not sure what form that will take, Cream being one of the prolific clubs on that square that's being gentrified. So
it's like saying that you're going to, demolish something really like some really significant monument and we'll just build it again. Like, I mean, Cream is like one of the original... one of the original like house or dance clubs or big super clubs or whatever they call them.
It's got some Beatles history, definitely, that place.
So yeah, it's quite a sort of significant music establishment.
Yeah, so it's a good point. Like Liverpool is quite a good case to compare to Baltimore in terms of that post-industrial decay being transformed into this money-making. These money-making mainly just kind of yuppie apartments, aren't they, normally? And it's not just kind of a cultural loss, but it's also a betrayal of inequality. I guess it's always generally aimed at the people who can afford the most, because that's where the money is. It's all about the money, pursuit of that dollar. So
something we don't see as much of in The Wire. It doesn't really focus too much on the community or culture surrounding that, but certainly as in London, like you're talking about, there's also the lasting effects of that, which are as sometimes referred to as Shoreditchification. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that. Yeah,
I mean, Shoreditchification. Shoreditch is an area just outside central London that in the 90s was a bit of a down and out district, really suffering from post-industrial kind of unemployment and drugs and the rest of it. And then it was suddenly gentrified and people moved in and the prices went up and the population radically changed and became young and professional and bar-y and kind of lots of disposable income. And that has gradually spread around London over the past 15, 20 years like wildfire. And all these districts around the centre of London that used to be quite inner city in terms of their characteristics and quite decaying have really just completely turned around. And there's almost this kind of unified culture that they all share of these. I guess a lot of people refer to it as hipsterism these days, kind of the craft beer pubs and the young people that have come in and made London their own, or at least those parts there. So it really is completely spreading across the whole city, huge parts of it, and it all started in Shoreditch. And it's something that we're seeing on the waterfront in Baltimore during The Wire. As the granary no longer becomes a granary, it still retains its granary name, but it's now just a bunch of condominiums, as the Americans call them, these kind of studio apartments that only the richest can afford, and they generally move there for work and don't really have any association with the city district originally.
And every single shop having like large wood panels on the front.
Yeah, it's these really kind of drab modern architecture that always going to that well. That
Dark brown wood, dark leather.
Always just
hang little flags from the ceiling and put sort of doors on the walls and
small little balconies and all the rest of it. Way too thin walls. And
it's hanging up loads of like bits of furniture and like hanging them from the walls.
A Tesco Express on the bottom. And just so it's just it's quite gentrification isn't all bad, but we're certainly fighting the wires corner here as far as they go with developers and gentrification, I guess.
I guess it could be worse. Like it's almost like it's our generation's version of those horrible tower blocks that they would build in like the 60s. Those kind of drab, cultureless places that are just for putting people up. It's kind of like our generation's versions of that. These horrible, soulless apartments that just for generic living in the Tesco downstairs. They're not really trying to create much of a scene or make a particularly pleasant area. It all feels very fabricated.
Yeah, I mean, those big blocks back in the 60s and 50s when they were first proposed were very exciting to people. It was like a new way to live. A closely knit community, everyone living, in their little apartment, and then downstairs they have the play area and the kind of enclosed children play space, and it completely didn't work like that. No one actually enjoyed living up these big tower blocks, and they quickly fell into disrepair and kind of dereliction. And as you say, this is a similar thing. It's kind of an exciting spike in just kind of development patterns that I don't think will have that much staying power. Certainly the architecture of these days doesn't really appeal to me too much, and they may well fall into the same pattern as they did back then.
Yeah. Well, that is it for the recap. That's everything.
Oh, right. Wow.
Yeah. That's it.
Okay. All right.
So unless there's anything else you'd like to say about
wasn't expecting that
episode as a whole.
I think that probably covers it. Let me just check that we have mentioned everything. Obviously, we didn't quite mention the gravity of what Stringer going straight means. That they're very scared that Stringer's already insulated himself from the street, and they're going to have to work very, very hard to find any ties that he has left with the street and the criminal world where they can charge him for doing criminal things. So, yeah. I think that's about it.
Very slowly becoming unobtainable.
Yeah, and it's a very, very scary thought for McNulty in particular. But yeah, I think otherwise, yeah, you're all right actually. At looking at my notes, that is everything covered. So let's move on to our final 4 sections, as we always do.
Yo, Chief, how you gonna come up here and try to game us?
Say what?
I'm saying you acting like we retarded or something.
Better we put a foot in your ass?
At least you'd understand it.
This ain't a trick, shitbird.
Look, we grind and y'all try to stop it. That's how we do. Why you gotta go and fuck with the program? All due respect.
Yeah, let's start by taking a look at the title this week. So, Hamsterdam. We already covered that there's a little bit of a dispute surrounding this. But I'm pretty sure HBO officially lists it as Hamsterdam.
And as I mentioned before, it's unique, I think, in being the only title to refer to a real-world noun as opposed to a concept, such as, time after time, all due respect, undertow, just these kind of conceptual things. Although I guess Hamsterdam could be seen as a synonym for drug-free zone, which is in some ways a concept, if that is the title. But I do like it. It's a nice title, and the way it fits well into the Amnesty Roundup scenes, quite literally, and also Cutty's induction at the end of the episode with all the themings in that club and brothel. At least kind of stereotypical themings worked quite well and fed into the title quite nicely.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, I think there's got to be a ham thing going on with police being pigs. The way that corner boy is just, I ain't going to no Hamsterdam.
Oh, of course, yeah. I feel really stupid for never having made that connection with the name.
Yeah, that's about it, really. It's mainly just kind of a bastardization of Amsterdam, talking about this. It's not really legalization they're looking for, is it? I mean, Colvin jokes about legalizing drugs, but it is a sort of de facto legalization, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
I think that's what the. I'm just looking at it now. I think the Wire Wiki sort of describes it as that.
Okay.
It's exploring the possible positive effects of like a de facto legalization, it says. So yeah, that sort of thing where you're creating a tolerance and like an acceptance of it. It's not really being legalized, not kind of by law per se, but more kind of common law.
Yeah. It's
I
like
guess.
these coffee shops.
Don't quote me on that
or-
because I don't really know
yeah.
much about law. I'm sure there's somebody, a law student, saying that that's a very silly thing to say, but yeah.
Definitely. What about the epigraph? Why you got to go and fuck with the system, says Fruit.
Oh, with the program.
Yeah, with the program, sorry, yeah. Good point.
Yeah, so we mentioned it before, how there's just complete resistance to change. And there's quite a few instances in this episode of people having to come up against the status quo. Cutty coming up against the status quo for, obviously being white. There's no way he can win because he's white. Why has he got to go and fuck with the program? And I guess Cutty as well. He feels like the program that he was on with the Barksdale organisation and making his money and being on the street. Why has he got to go and fuck with the program by trying to start living straight? It's clearly not going to work out for him. It's clearly going to be very unenjoyable. So yeah, why mess with it if it ain't broke?
Yeah, definitely, and a good epigraph overall. I'm quite a fan of it, and as you demonstrated there, it has a very wide application to the show in general. Just speaking about a city that really doesn't have an appetite for reform. In terms of your characters that stood out for me, I think on this episode, the Barksdale figures really stood out as impressive players. I think Cutty stood out for the first time, had a lot more to do. Slim Charles,
was going to say Cutty.
Yeah, Slim Charles as well really made an impact for the first time as well. And Stringer, haven't mentioned him as a favourite character for a while, but I think he really shows, particularly seeing him in a new environment with his legitimate business folk, is quite a twist in the tale that I enjoyed seeing. And also Freeman. Freeman does something different that we don't normally see him doing here, really getting mad and irie and really nailing it as well. He really puts McNulty in his place and plays it very well.
Yeah, I was going to say Cutty as well, just because he stands out a bit more in this episode. Possibly for the first time, you could say, get a little bit more screen time with him. See a bit more of his temptations that slowly lead him back in.
Yeah.
Freeman for much the same reasons, just seeing a bit of passion and anger from him, and almost a little bit of worry as well about McNulty. The fact that when he's like, check on those fucking properties, like he's not going to be beaten by him. There's a sort of a bit of a rivalry there, I think, because like I say, you do feel like Lester was more like McNulty when he was younger.
Yeah, and he makes it clear that later on that McNulty's problem isn't the fact that he's investigating Stringer, it's the way he's doing it and pissing everyone off in the process. I think he makes that point quite loudly to him when he exposes what he's discovered.
Yeah, he's making too much of a big deal out of it.
Yeah. And what about your scenes? What stood out for you here?
Oh, that's a toughie. I was thinking maybe... I did actually strangely quite like the scene with Cutty and the supervisor with the landscaping, where he's telling him all about how harsh it's going to be, and he kind of talks about, back's going to hurt and it's going to be really hot, and there's just all these lawnmowers going on in the background, this grating sound the whole way through it. I just thought it was a really nice use of audio as another example that I mentioned with Landsman and his conversation. The way it's clever use of audio. So I kind of strangely like the truth being delivered to Cutty there. I thought it was really nice, the final scene with Cutty being reintroduced and welcome home, looking very out of his depth. And another great moment from Slim Charles there, and Bodie. So yeah, it's kind of tough to choose in this episode. There's a lot of scenes once again.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't want to have to just pick. I don't want to have to pick Colvin. Like, he's such a consistent character that it's too easy to pick his scenes.
Yeah, I felt like he only stood out really at the start. He wasn't really the center of this episode. For me, it was. I think the ending was really unique and interesting, and it was interesting that you mentioned the soundtrack during the gardening scene or the landscaping scene, because the soundtrack during the club scene is also very intense and a very modern electronic form of music that Cutty just probably finds to be a complete onslaught, perhaps. Similar kind of soundtrack, just really setting the mood for the guy.
Especially seeing with the landscaping bit, we see that there is like a boombox or whatever playing some music, and that it obviously gets drowned out by all of these lawnmower blades and motors.
Yeah, that is true. Any fun to be found here is not within grasp.
Yeah, it's shrouded by the work.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's nice. I think that's quite a sort of subtle scene.
Yeah, very good point. And I think, as you mentioned, the Cutty, Bodhi and Slim interaction was fantastic. I think the schools...
You do still like females, don't you?
Yes, of course. That, and of course, I was referring more to the original meeting on the street where he gets chromed up and the rest of it, but also them doing a bit of blowback and taking some beers.
Yeah, well, it leads in quite nicely, doesn't it? He reunites and then they just hang out for a bit.
Yeah.
They welcome him home.
As we always say, The Wire doesn't spend enough time away from the professional elements of its show, so it really is nice when we do get these few moments where they just let their hair down, and particularly here when they're just on a night out in POV mode.
Yeah.
And the school scene with Colvin I thought was quite fun. It was really, really fun to see those kids getting up to no good, like, was it "Don't touch my bum, faggot" and all that standard juvenile stuff.
Everyone suddenly needing to go to the toilet.
Yeah, how are you going to discriminate?
Setting a dangerous precedent.
Yeah, and the kids know exactly how to exploit that discrimination, which is really good. That they're kind of trained for the street, which is exactly what the point that Colvin makes later on in season 4. So it all just builds up to it. And I also thought the amnesty roundup scenes with Kirk and Carver are worth a mention. They kind of get swept under the carpet with all the stuff going on with the police and the Barksdales, but they were really fun while they lasted. Nothing too deep, but a really nice exercise in what Kirk and Carver can be when they're at their best as a double act.
Yeah, nice, a bit of a going on with the duo there.
Yeah. All right, there we go. A little bit briefer than...
That just about covers it, doesn't it? Yeah,
I think so, yeah.
Didn't quite hit the 2.5 hour mark like we have before, but I guess we can't have them all being that long. It takes as long as it takes, I guess.
Still a shred of daylight out there. Would you believe it?
Really? Oh, I can't see any from here. Are you
sure
sure that's not just all the light pollution in London?
Yeah, I think you might be right. We'll call it light pollution.
It's like the way it used to be with spiders or rats. Nowadays, you're never more than 8 feet away from a street light.
Yeah, that is true. Unless you're a rural person.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks again for joining us for Caught on the Wire. I'll be back again next week, as usual, for the 29th of May for episode 5. Drawing very close to that halfway mark now, aren't we?
Yeah.
When will that be? When will our halfway mark be?
Once we finish next week, we're halfway through the whole show, so...
Oh, right. Well, there we go then. So very close.
Episode 30.
Yeah. So yeah, keep those messages coming in. Email caughtonthewire@gmail.com, and the usual on the website, caughtonthewire.wordpress.com, and the contact page. You can download all the episodes on there. So yeah, check it out. One thing that we didn't mention that maybe we'll have to come to, or unless you want to talk about it now, I'm kind of wrapping it up really, so maybe we'll talk about it next week. But I will post a video that Toby sent me about tautologies in The Wire. You sent me that video, Toby.
Yes, I did find that. I'm not sure how new it is, but it's something I haven't seen before, and it's great. It's tautology is when you use words that don't need to be used, but they kind of add to the meaning. It's it's one of those things that you have to kind of give examples of to really understand. And
it's like using two separate items when they mean the same thing.
Yeah.
But using that to amplify their meaning.
Definitely.
So the game is the game, for example. That would be one example.
Yeah. Pain is pain. And it's something that the Wire goes to a lot, and it's something that we don't really acknowledge, I don't think, but it's nice that someone has, and they've drawn together all the uses of these tautologies in the show and put them in order into a YouTube video. It takes about 5 minutes to get through all of them, and it's very telling of the show's themes, of just this idea, as you say, Alex, of this inevitability of decline and kind of cynicism.
Yeah.
But also it can be at times very just comical. It can be really funny to hear these people just make these really inane statements about, you know, Omar being Omar and death being death, the game being the game. It's like there's just devoid of any kind of just kind of brain. It's just completely random and so it works
without
on
context anyway.
Yeah, it's just completely out of context, and it works on quite a few levels, this video, so it's definitely worth checking out. So yeah, please post it to the page, Alex.
Yeah, I'll chuck that up on the old blog. We'll probably talk about that a little bit more next week maybe, but until then, thanks very much for joining us, and we'll see you next Friday for episode 5. Bye bye.